All right, everybody's here. Good evening. I'm Brad Graham. I'm the co-owner of the bookstore, along with my wife, Alyssa Muscatine. And we're very honored to have with us Senator Ron Wyden, who's here to talk about his new book, It Takes Chutzpah, How to Fight Fearlessly for Progressive Change. But before I say anything else about the senator, I just want to note that, at least from our perspective here at P&P, the most important thing about him is that he's married to the owner of another independent bookstore, and quite a legendary bookstore, the Strand in New York City. In fact, Ron's wife, Nancy Bass, is the third generation of her family to own the store. So the senator is, as they say, our kind of people. Now, on the topic of this evening's discussion, which is chutzpah, it's clear that Ron himself showed early signs of this combination of boldness and gutsiness when he ran for Congress decades ago and got elected to the House at age 31. All he had really wanted to do before that was play professional basketball, but failing that, Congress beckoned. He served in the House for 16 years, then shifted to the Senate, where he's been for 28 years. That adds up to 44 years in Congress, and still counting. Today, Ron's the second most senior Democrat in the Senate, the dean of Oregon's congressional delegation, and before the Republicans took control of the Senate this month, he chaired the powerful Senate Finance Committee. He is, of course, known for his progressive stances on a wide range of issues. His book is, in part, a memoir recounting a number of his legislative efforts over the years, but it's also a sort of management guide for how to get things done, which is where the Jewish notion of chutzpah comes in, a notion that was instilled in Ron by his parents who fled Nazi Germany in the 1930s. From a young age, Ron writes, he's been fixated on fixing the world. And he's developed his own set of 12 rules for defining chutzpah. In his book, he illustrates each rule chapter by chapter with examples from his life. He also extols the virtues of another Jewish concept that has guided him, tikkun olam, which translates literally as repair the world. Ron's book is essentially a call to action that hopefully will inspire all of us to go make a difference like Ron has. As he says, political change is not top-down, it's grassroots up, and often takes some chutzpah. Now, in conversation with Ron will be another progressive senator who's been bent on changing the world as well and improving all our lives, Cory Booker. Cory has represented New Jersey in the Senate since 2013, and before that served as mayor of Newark, a city councilman, and a tenant lawyer. While not Jewish, Cory has a deep understanding of and longtime familiarity with Judaism. It's been said that he quotes Hebrew phrases and Talmudic passages with as much frequency as verses from the Christian Bible. So please join me in welcoming, as they say on the Hill, the gentleman from Oregon and the gentleman from New Jersey.
Hello, everybody. Hello. Hello. All right. Baruch Hashem. Thank God we are all here.
He knows more than most Jews.
I'm honorary mishpucha. All right. So look, I was blown away by this book. You don't often get a chance to read a colleague's a book, because not everyone writes one, but not somebody who has written one that is just so full of extraordinary history. And as our incredible host said, and by the way, isn't it great to be in a local bookstore? And
let's hear it for Bradley.
Yes. But I just want to start off just getting something off my chest, because when I started reading this, Chairman, I guess that was the last Congress, ranking member, I immediately was sort of struck by this very terrible punch to my gut. I'm not writing this book to grease my run for President of the United States, Cory Booker. It's a fantastically interesting job that I don't want to do. In fact, I long ago declared myself the Senate's designated driver, the person who won't ever succumb to the intoxicating fantasy, Cory Booker, of being the leader of the free world. So you didn't write this book because you're running for president in 2028.
Maybe.
But you do have some pretty profound reasons for writing the book. Can you go from there? Because you've had a career that spanned for decades, but you decided to put your story down finally. Why?
Well, first of all, I'm so grateful to have a chance to be with all of you. I went to school on a basketball scholarship, dreaming of playing in the NBA, a ridiculous idea, because at 6'4", I was too small, and I made up for it by being really slow. And I never thought that opportunities like I've had were available to Jewish kids. And so this is really such a treat to be with all of you. And after a big game, my mother would always say, "Dear, I know you're going out with your buddies. Just make sure you're running with the right crowd." With Cory and all of you, I know I'm running with the right crowd. So big thanks, and especially to Bradley, so appreciative.
Well, I actually want to push on that a little bit.
Already?
Already. What was remarkable about books that I have read about from my colleagues is not every one of them gets really vulnerable. And I think you mentioned basketball. You were actually quite good, and he's being very modest. And he goes through some of his career. But you found yourself saying in the early chapters that as a young boy, you felt very lonely and very isolated, and that you had a real struggle in your adolescence until you found basketball. Can you talk about a little bit about that sort of the hardship, a little bit of the isolation? You also were most certainly a minority. You were not in a Jewish community at all. And what was going on in your personal life?
Basketball basically was my diaspora. You know, we had a junior high school around the corner, and there was a ball there. And I just picked it up one day, and I just shot after shot after shot. And at that point, I was pretty shy. And I said, here's something, if I practiced like crazy, I could do well, and I could make some friends. So that's part of the kind of story for a lot of kids, is how do you find something? And part of it is you got to use your chutzpah. How many of you know what chutzpah is? Okay, there's a lot of people who are still trying to figure it out. A couple of days ago in New York, a guy came up to me and said, "You're the basketball guy, right? I saw you play once." I said, "Yeah, that's me." He goes, "So, you got this book. It's all about Hutzpah."
Hutzpah.
Well, not really. But like Cory said, you know, you find something that can be your anchor. And then you gotta take some risks. You gotta have some grit. You gotta be willing to be determined. And that's true for whatever walk of life you're in. And that's the book I wanted to write. And you gotta have chutzpah if you're gonna be able to get a wonderful staff like all of the young people who are here today from our office. Will you guys raise your hands? Giving public service a good name. And by the way, when Senator Booker came to our office and some of our staffers saw him, the word on the whole corridor went out, "There's a Cory sighting." And everybody came out of the offices and wanted to ask questions, and we were talking about some social policy and the like. So we're really lucky to to have Senator Booker, and he has my permission. My permission as the designated driver to go forward and be the president.
I appreciate you saying that. Yeah. All right. I'm gonna ask our host if I have permission to treat him like a hostile witness, because he's not answering my question. So I'm gonna lead the witness a little bit. A lot of us in this room know what it's like. In fact, I think this is one of the reasons why the movie Wicked is so moving to people, is because the Elphaba had that really tough times as a high school student. You saw her at this school. You were isolated. You come from a Jewish tradition. You were in a non-Jewish community. Your parents got a divorce. You were very honest with what it's like. Now it's a much more common thing. Many kids have divorced parents. Your parents divorced in the 50s, and your extraordinary bond with your dad, but suddenly he wasn't there. And it sounded like you were struggling a little bit, and somehow the mix of those two things seemed like such a catalytic ingredient. The two ingredients here. One is your Jewish tradition, which I want to talk about how you define chutzpah here, and I'll read that to you. But you had this powerful Jewish tradition of two parents that escaped the Nazis and brought those values of sticking up for the truth, of standing up to bullies. And then a son who has his own struggles of feeling a little isolated. It seemed to me that these two things made you perfectly attuned to standing up and fighting for causes bigger than yourself, and finding a way to do that, as you talk about in your rules, not by as an individual thing, but finding a way to create great teams.
And not only do you suss it out correctly, Cory, but it goes all the way through your life, because my brother was schizophrenic. And when I came to the United States Senate, I went to the floor of the Senate, and I hadn't really talked about it. And I said, look, all over the country, all over, there are families like ours. You know, my dad was gone. My mom didn't sleep very much. The whole house was, tense and on edge. And I said, when I got to the Senate, I was going to be in the tikkun olam business, just like Cory said, try to perfect the world. And to this day, we're battling to get a fair shake for people trying to deal with mental illness. I talked, for example, about some of our colleagues, for example, who are helping with this problem of ghost networks. You guys heard anything about this? This is as bad as prior authorization. You know how awful that is in terms of health insurance. We're trying to get it approved. Ghost networks means you pay for some coverage, and then the insurance company just vanishes. So Cory is right. I mean, a lot of these experiences that we have early on, when you have to step up and swallow hard, and I had to be the man of the family, essentially at 12, it's pretty powerful. And you remember it, and you try to make sure that you can build on it.
And again, at the end of the book, you talk powerfully about how your own personal experiences with your brother who had mental health challenges really shaped your public policy efforts and a lot of your efforts on healthcare as well.
No question about it. And I'll just offer it up. Healthcare is far and away the most important issue in America. Because if you and your family don't have your health, everything else goes by the board, right? You can't be available for that walk in the park. Your loved ones might have trouble sleeping. You've got to be there for them. And so I went into public service. I was director of the Gray Panthers at the age of 24, full head of hair and rugged good looks.
There's an amazing picture in this book of this guy next to me, and I'm a black guy. I used to have a great afro, but his Jufro was amazing. It defied gravity. Defying gravity is a theme now, as you can see. It was an amazing fro this man had.
And I loved the fact that you could make a difference. This was a very different time for seniors than today. Today there are like 18 gazillion members of the AARP, the Association of Retired Persons. Back then, if a town had a lunch program for older people, that was considered like a colossal deal. Hey, there's a lunch program. And those are the kinds of values, as Cory's talking about, that Jews learn early on from family. You're supposed to be there for your community. You're supposed to talk things through, which is, again, part of the Jewish tradition and has really shaped my world. And I will tell you, right now, the country is very restless. We want to know what we're going to do. And for those of us that are strong Democrats and believe in a passionate and progressive kind of world, I hope this book gives people some confidence again, like they had after Trump won the first time, when everybody went out and said, we're going to make a difference. Now it's even more important that we show the chutzpah to do it. And last night when the president spoke to the country, people were talking about oligarchs. I said, well, I was chairman of the finance committee, and right now you got two tax systems. The working people pay taxes with every paycheck if you're a firefighter and a nurse. These oligarchs, the billionaires, pay what they want when they want to, and sometimes pay little or nothing for years on end. So these are all part of the formative experiences that you have if you show some chutzpah and you go out and focus on trying to work with people in the community and make a difference.
And this is the incredible thing. So just picture this. One of your earliest jobs was being with the Grey Panthers. You guys were racking up winners. You weren't changing national policy, but you were in your community making a difference. And then they pulled the rug out on you. They kind of came to you and changed the direction of your life and basically said that, hey, you're doing a great job as an advocate, as an activist. Now let's make you a politician.
I wanted to play in the NBA. So when they came to see me, I said, I don't know anything about this. You want to talk about Social Security and Medicare? How many digits in a Social Security number? I mean, I didn't know any of these kinds of things. And so we talked it through, and I was still mulling on it. And once a senior came up to me and said, Ron, you're going to win. I know it doesn't sound very probable. They said, how's that? I said, tell me, how would it happen? They said, you cannot say no in America to your grandmother.
So you had, it reminded me of my start, really. It was a bunch of elder tenant leaders that came and told me to run for city council. But, you know, in this book, you talked about that this lifestyle is not easy. This is later in the book, you're talking about being a senator, but you're encouraging people to run for office. Or maybe you're thinking about the ugly bits, the torrents of insults that you have to endure in the job, the public attacks on your character, your intelligence, your sanity, the exhausting fundraising, the deal-making that makes you question your own judgment and causes people you like to question your morals.
What about the naked man who was at the door?
Wow, that was a moment. That was one of my favorite moments in the book because, again, it took me back to my beginning. Like, you decided to take on all of those challenges. When you when you're in the nonprofit world, people often see you as noble and self-sacrificing. As soon as you decide to run for politics, you know, there's a great politician in New Jersey that once said, before I was a politician, if I helped somebody cross the street, I was a really nice person. Now when I help somebody cross the street, I'm just trying to get their vote. And so you jump into that and you start in the grassroots array, the same way I won my first seat, knocking on thousands of doors. And one day you knock on a door. Maybe this is an Oregon thing because it ain't a New Jersey thing. And this dude, this guy, just opens a door, as they would say,
in his birthday suit.
In his birthday suit completely. But what got me was you didn't miss a beat. You just looked him in the eye. Don't look down, don't look down. You just looked him in the eye, and it sounds like you got the vote.
So I basically got, when I started this kind of manual sort of politics for dummies.
Yes.
And I had never run for anything. So this guy, I'd knock on the door and I'd have a script because I was like, 29. I'd say, good afternoon, sir. I'm Ron Wyden, the co-director of the Oregon Grey Panthers. And then I'd start looking down. And by the time I got here, it was clear there was nothing on. And so I said, what does Politics for Dummies say you do in an instance like this? And they basically, in my head, told you should always keep your cool and try to get out of there before you get bit by the dog.
All right. I want to get to some of these rules, but right before I do, I think it's really important. Gandhi said, honor your incarnation, that all of us were born and incarnated on this world in a cultural context that is rich and purposeful, and we should all know that we draw from our cultural context. I was born as a black guy from Jersey. You were born as a Jew, and you really do a great job of showing the universality of the Jewish traditions and the faith, and the fact that so many of these issues really come from this sense. You quote Rabbi Tzvi Friedman, a senior editor with Chabad, 350-year-old international Orthodox Jewish tradition. You talk about chutzpah is really destructive and ugly in the wrong application. But good chutzpah, you say, people who do bad chutzpah, that's destructive, that's ugly. It could be impudence, gall, entitlement, presumption. But good chutzpah you call, by contrast, as vital and fantastic. It's pursuing moral endeavors that are codified in Jewish law. To be a Jew, you quote Rabbi Friedman saying, you need two opposites. I loved this. A sense of shame that prevents you from acting with chutzpah to do the wrong thing, and a sense of chutzpah that prevents you from being ashamed to stand up and do what is right. It's extraordinary.
Says it all. And as we worked on this and talked to rabbis and religious leaders across the sort of political spectrum, I came to feel that what I wanted to say about chutzpah is that it is inherently good. As a value, it is inherently good. Sometimes somebody comes along who tries to warp it or misappropriate it. And somehow I can think of a person who's become prominent who just might fit possibly the bill. And I will tell you, it almost transcends your thinking about human relations. Because when I saw Donald Trump mock a journalist and make fun of him, I said, what in the world is leadership all about? Because we think of our presidents and our leaders as role models, imperfect that they might be. But to mock someone because of their disability, that is really warping, chutzpah. And we know all the other instances. He can shoot a neighbor in their hometown and everybody will still vote for him and all the rest. But I'll never forget what a kind of emotionally scarring picture that was to see a national leader mock someone. It wasn't by a mistake. It was warping chutzpah.
Yes, but that negative chutzpah, that lack of shame. And you really talk about the power that you learned from Judaism and brought it into your public life. Judaism is about moral codes that have been arrived at through public deliberation, which means you expose yourself to discussion, debate, and even argument. The mission of the commentary, rabbis have been arguing what it means to be a good person for a long time. You took that to an extraordinary extreme. I'm almost embarrassed. I got to go out and do more town halls because you convene open town hall meetings every year in each of Oregon's 36 counties. You said, I beat that goal. I had over 1,100 open town hall meetings over my 28 years in the Senate. You seem to and talk very much about how, in many ways, the opening yourself up to public criticism, to debate, to discussion, to engagement has offered you some extraordinary insights, made you a better leader, and actually exposed you to some extraordinary helpful ideas.
And when you think about it, the really exceptional rabbis are out walking people through issues all the time. They don't just say, you got to do A, B, and C. I mean, you think about Passover and special nights that we celebrate. But it always, to me, comes back when you have an exceptional rabbi who wants people to have a chance to grow and learn together, to have a chance to be part of a discussion and a dialogue. And, we're dealing with immigration, for example. It's on the floor right now. Triggered enormous concerns all over the country and recently at a town hall meeting, one of these meetings that Cory mentioned, it was really getting out of hand. I mean, it was just angry and raw. And finally I said, how many of you here tonight at this meeting, there were a couple hundred people, are Native Americans? Kind of people looked around and, you know, Cousin Louie wasn't a Native American. And so 6 hands went up out of 200, 250 people. And I said, folks, you've made my point tonight. As we learn about this, and I emphasize learning, we're going to realize that virtually all of us are touched by the immigrant experience. We're virtually all immigrants unless you're a Native American. And the decibel level went down. It was like the tension just went right out of the room. So there are ways, again, and people were kind of puzzled about where I was going and how it was going to relate to them. But I decided that I was just going to bring this out, and we'll see where it goes, and now I can do it. And it generates always a universal kind of sentiment of people knowing a little bit more about the people they're with and wanting to come back and ask questions about it, which is what good rabbis do when they involve people.
And it's incredible, that tradition of engaging in discussion, dialogue, and debate. But the other thing that seems like the Jewish tradition had done for you is, with 2 parents that escaped the Nazis, this totalitarianism, government control, government surveillance, it seemed to have armed you with this also sort of very Jewish ideals that you stand up to power, you shake your fist at God, you don't accept a central authority in a way that infringes upon individual rights and individual freedom. You actually mention this extraordinary moment from the Torah where Abraham welcomes strangers in the desert, the immigration. I was a stranger in a strange land, brings them into the tent, gives them the best food and drink. They bless him to be the father of 3 faiths, basically. And then they say they're running out to go destroy a city, and they don't just go, do what you want to do. They argue with messengers from God and say, no, don't destroy Sodom, standing up for justice. And it seems like you have this really, and it got me at the end of the book in the gut as we're getting ready to have this inauguration. You have this strong, almost lifetime commitment to not letting our government ever lean towards fascist, totalitarian, authoritarian ideals. And you speak passionately about the issues of privacy, the issues of government power, and especially at the end of the book that really moved me, really warned us about what the inclinations are of the coming president.
And some of these experiences are sort of in my head permanently because, you know, when I was growing up and I didn't pay much attention to world affairs, I picked up on a few things. And once I asked my dad what it was like being a young guy in Hitler's day. And he said, what we really worried about was the knock on the door in the night. That's what we were most worried about. And that frames a lot of my privacy work that I do today. And I'm really honored because I think liberty is one of those kind of core values. And I think he's in the back somewhere. Is Keith Chu back there? Keith, can you wave? Oh, okay. He gets an exemption. This young man has done more to promote privacy in America from our office, working with Senator Booker and his staff. And he feels very strongly about these issues personally as well. So these stories that we're telling that we hope will make people come forward and take those steps to protect this country and make their communities safer and stronger and freer are so often framed by these kinds of experiences. And when I go out on the floor of the Senate to talk about the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, for example, a major privacy issue that Senator Booker and I work on together, one of the first things I say to myself when I walk on the floor is, remember the knock on the door.
Wow. And it's not just you going to the floor and speaking on it. What was good for me in this book, reading about my colleague here, is I forget, like, every major internet fight you have been in the center of, defining the direction of this country. And it really humbled me to see the impact. And one I had forgotten about until I read the chapter in the book that included this. Could you tell them about the Pippa and FOPA fight? Like, what happened there?
Pippa and SOPA, anybody remember those things? These were these big, there's Michael, yeah.
Some of the political insiders here are like, I know Pippa and SOPA.
This was the first viral debate about technology. And what happened was some very good Democrats heard from labor and Hollywood and the like, and they kept talking about theft on the internet. And we all said, that's a very serious problem. We're not for theft, and you've got to have a strong deterrent. But they went overboard trying to please these interest groups. And so as they collected more and more sponsors, like 45 or 50 or something like that, they were planning to have a vote. And so I went to the Senate leadership, then Harry Reid, and I said, guys, you should know that millions of young people spend more time online in a week than they do thinking about you guys in a year.
And by the way, before you get to the really climax of the story, which is you were right and Harry Reid and others were pretty shocked, but this was really about internet freedom, right? It was about
internet
will
freedom?
we have the ability to share content, create content and freedoms, or will a handful of America's biggest companies really be able to start to sort of put the squeeze on what individual Americans can do on the internet?
And there were just proposals in this whole effort that defied common sense. They wanted to mess with the domain name system, which was basically like the phone book of the internet. That was a big part of it. It's obviously very different today. But I said, guys, you're going to drive people nuts. And I predict if you go forward with this, you are going to run up against this juggernaut of citizen opposition. Harry Reid said, no, we're having a vote because Hollywood wants it and labor wants it and everybody wants it.
Democratic, I just want to really make this note about your career because multiple times in the book, before I got to the Senate, I see you're not afraid to take on your own party. You're not afraid to talk on Republicans. So this was an alliance between Democratic interest groups, Republicans who tend to support big billionaires and millionaires, and you were basically trying to fight them to stop this bill from moving forward.
Yeah, and you know, I was not very senior in the Senate at the time, and I just kept kind of appealing to Harry Reid, who was this really crusty Nevadan, and, you know, they're all involved in mining and the like, and he by and large liked me, except when I took him on these kinds of issues. And he said, finally, we're going to have the damn vote. And I said, okay, Harry, you should know that I believe you're going to have this tidal wave of opposition. He looked at me and said, we'll see. So Jeff Michaels over there knows more about technology and government than just about anybody other than Keith Chu, who's trying to pick up his son, apparently. And Jeff organized in our office this huge network of grassroots organizations. And the vote was scheduled for a Tuesday. And the Thursday before, we had something like 15 million people, advocates, you know, calling, texting, writing in, we don't want this.
And the homepages of some of the biggest sites in America, this is where some of you might remember it, they all went dark, right? Like a lot of these small internet scrappy companies that are now really big agreed with you so much. Like Wikipedia went dark. Instagram or I don't think it was Instagram then. It was yeah, Wikipedia was one of the big ones.
Number of the other
forum sites, yeah, closed, just shut their down. And you were right. And Harry Reid didn't even bring the bill to the floor. He was so blown away that he just retreated, tucked tail, and ran. And we never heard about it again, right?
He called and said, okay, no vote. Hang up the phone.
Yeah, literally, Harry Reid did not even offer him a chance to retort, I told you so.
Not a word.
He stopped the vote. Now, this is going to get a lot of people upset. And I was coming over here, my significant other was saying to me, like, some of these fights take so long, like years it takes. And I was blown away, and I had forgotten. I never connected these dots because I was one of the people that follow you on the floor in this round about mifepristone, about one judge, one Trump-appointed judge, was able to upend access to medical abortions. I did not know you were at the center. I was blown away reading this about you, that you were at the center decades earlier in the RU40 in making this drug that available for people in the first place. It was really amazed me, Ron, or Chairman, that I always tell people when we're walking along and people come up to me and ask for selfies and ignore him, I go, this is the difference between celebrity and significance. He literally...
I'm riding Cory's coattails.
No, sir. I mean, that's what humbled me about the book is, could you kind of talk about, number one, that fight 25 years ago and now you're doing it again, and just fill people in on that. But more importantly, to my girlfriend, like, why that must get tiresome to you that you're fighting the same battles again for reproductive freedom in our country after so many strides were made, after so many successes, and now we have to watch us lose all this ground.
Well, the real message of this story is that government and politics is essentially not linear. You don't go from point A to point B, and that's that, and you call it a day and go have an ice cream cone. If you want to see something that my wife characterizes as ridiculous even by Saturday Night Live standards, is I held the first hearing on mifepristone in 1990 from the House Small Business Committee, which had never done anything like this.
And by the way,
ever.
By the way, this is one of the best moments. I mean, this book is really about chutzpah. He gets into the House of Representatives, a junior guy. Your Tip O'Neill moment was hilarious. He beats Tip O'Neill's like dear friend and doesn't get a committee assignment. And what's extraordinary to me is like, you're basically, Tip O'Neill sending you a message, perhaps one of the most powerful people in Washington, basically sending him a subtle message, kid, you're going to learn the hard way. You took out my friend, we're leaving you out in the cold. He has this scene in the book where he walks in to see Tip O'Neill, and by the end, you had him charmed and laughing. Next thing you know, you get a committee assignment, then you get the moxie of the chutzpah again to go to the chairman of that committee and say, I kind of want to create my own subcommittee out of whole cloth that never existed before. I was blown away. And then you use that subcommittee in the most creative ways to hold one of the first ever hearing on reproductive freedom. It's extraordinary, man.
It was an exceptional time.
You are an exceptional.
Anybody ever heard
moxie, brown-nosing? You got Tip O'Neill on your side, man. I don't know what it is. It's pretty. You definitely deserve applause for that. And again, like, you're a kid, you're working with senior citizens. You're not a senior citizen. You're also taking on issues that other people don't see as urgent and important, that don't necessarily directly affect you. So go ahead.
Anybody ever heard of Jesse Helms?
Yes.
So there I was, this kid with Cory's, medium-sized Jewish fro, and my wife thinks there's actually a C-SPAN video of the whole hearing, and my wife says, this is just ridiculous. I've had my friends look at this, and we just heard stitches. And I was so worked up about the prospect of Jesse Helms making the decisions with respect to women's health. We just kind of walked it through. And to give you a sense of how there really is some kind of symmetry and history to all this, the issue today with mifepristone is exactly like it was 30 years ago, which is what's going to prevail? Will it be science and hard medical evidence, which unquestionably will demonstrate that this medicine is safe? Or will it be Jesse Helms' view that it's all about politics? And we won that fight. We stopped George Herbert Walker Bush, if you can believe how far back this goes. Bill Clinton gets elected, and his people call us up and say, we're going to make the decision on the basis of science, not politics. It was a thrill because a lot of the testing went on at the University of Oregon Health Sciences Center, and my state couldn't believe that they were going to be part of this the debate. And then we had 25 years, as you know, of getting to the point where mifepristone is used in about 50% of the instances where there's going to be an abortion and people want a medical, safe alternative to surgical abortion. And it was an exhilarating moment, and I'm still struck by, in life, in government, in philanthropy, you're always summoned. And you're not going to have victories that just go from point A to point B, but you got to have the chutzpah to stay with it and work for the right thing and look at the kinds of, and we describe it, the orchestrating of your various, options and involving, people and growing and living just exactly like your rabbis, your best rabbis tell you you can and make a difference.
So Napoleon used to quote another great general of an earlier time and say, l'audace, l'audace, toujours l'audace. My French is terrible, forgive me. But audacity, audacity, always audacity. And yours should be chutzpah, chutzpah, always chutzpah, because it is this nuance. And I think it's important, it was instructive to me, and I think it could be instructive to everybody, which is you balance this thing of saying, I don't care about the political lines here. I don't care about left, right. I'm going to try to build coalitions that get really important fundamental ideas, and you ground them in the Constitution itself, successful. But you lament at those lost souls, as you seem to see them, that are not loyal to ideology, that are not loyal to the Constitution, that are not loyal to real ideas and getting things done. Here is something, talk about not pulling punches. An ideology without ideas is a form of mental masturbation. It might make you feel good, but it produces nothing of value. The current destruction of the Republican Party as an effective governing force rests on its abandonment of ideas, as represented in the fatuous and thankfully unsuccessful quest of the MAGA Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan to become Speaker of the House. The preamble to the U.S. Constitution charges Congress with the development and implementation of ideas that establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the welfare, secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our prosperity. A summary of affirmative actions that literally constitute the practical functions of our nation and our government. Yet here is an angry man who, over the course of his 17 years in Congress, has never sponsored a bill that became law. Man, that's rough. I had to put the book down at that moment. I said, you just eviscerated that guy.
So if you don't know him, he's the fella who always is in shirt sleeves. It's kind of his shtick, his kind of, calling card. So you say to yourself, okay, this is somebody who's going to really, dig in and bring people together and solve things. But as the book says, and Cory says, that's not exactly, so to speak, the way it plays out. And the opportunity today in public service, at a time when the parties are so polarized, requires that you do some different stuff. I mean, we say in the book, we'll work with anybody who's got good ideas and principles. Bipartisanship is not about taking each other's crummy ideas and then putting on a suit and running around town bragging about it. It's about taking good ideas. And each of the rules in the book tries to play to a good idea. We have something called playing the long game.
Yes.
Because everybody is against, doing that, just get the short-term win. Well, the clean energy bill that we passed in 2022 is an example of playing the long game.
Yes.
It took me a full decade. And this came after 40 previous years of never anything on climate. No cap and trade, no pricing, no regulation, no nothing. And I basically went up in the attic and said, we're going to try to find a different approach. And the different approach was essentially lowering carbon in America, but also keeping a focus on holding down energy costs. And we finally got an agreement, and we got a president so that after the 10 years of work, we could take it off the shelf and basically hand it to a president who is sympathetic.
Okay, so let me, again, you'll be amazed when you read the book at how many of the most important fights of the last 50 years that Ron Wyden not only was at the center of, but navigated things to a place where you didn't get the ball as far as you wanted down the field, but you got a significant. So I want to take you to one last one, then we'll open it up for some questions. But one last thing, because this is a moment to me, I wish I could have been with you.
Jews have a lot of guilt. I took Cory's water.
No.
So I drank that one.
Yeah, but there's one closer to you that I got.
Good. Oh,
I got.
Good. All right.
I got. It's a blessing.
So much for Jewish guilt.
A blessing on your head, sir. Mazel tov, mazel tov. All right. Okay, so this is the moment I loved. Okay, you've been working in the healthcare space, principally, try, fail, bipartisan coalition, face defeat. And now you finally get this issue ramping up to the point that the press, from the New York Times, Time Magazine, other people are praising your ideas, and it becomes a presidential primary center focus. You're literally watching these two people, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, battle over ideas that you have been nurturing for the longest time. Barack Obama wins the primary, he wins the presidency. And this is just funny to me. Like, you'd been to the White House many times, but he sort of invites you to sneak in because, God forbid, somebody sees the healthcare guy coming in to advise the president. So you go through some back tunnels, escorted in, nobody sees you. You get into the White House, you have this one-on-one meeting with Barack Obama, and you basically tell him, hey, you're 80% right. He goes, I'm sorry, we're still doing it my way. And in many ways, you wish he listened to you. Will you talk about that for a moment?
Well, he invited me to meet with him in the Oval Office on the third day of his presidency. I thought that was pretty cool. I've been at the White House a number of times, usually with big groups and this kind of thing. And he said, look, you're the healthcare guy. You've been working on this for a long time. And he goes, I agree with most of what you want. For example, if nothing had been done except it included our bill to finally stop these discrimination cases for people with a pre-existing condition. And it used to be that the insurance companies could just clobber somebody who had a pre-existing condition. And I'm worried that J.D. Vance wants to go back to those days, if you listen to what he said in the campaign. And let me just say here at Politics and Prose, we are not going back to the days when you can beat the stuffing out of people with a pre-existing condition. Not going to happen with Senator Booker and I in the Senate. But the president says, I agree with 90% of your book, and he took so many of our proposals in terms of prevention and the like, but it didn't have enough cost containment. And I liked President Obama. How could you not admire that kind of chutzpah? He was in the United States Senate for about 15 minutes. And he ran for president and did it with grace and thoughtfulness and the ability to rally us. It was a magnificent effort. So how could you not admire it? But I said, I probably don't get this chance but once in a lifetime. And so finally I said, Mr. President.
And by the way, he is at meteoric popularity. We just saw, the poet laureate Maya Angelou, others. It was an amazing inauguration. That's what's Clinton's. I'm sorry, different poet laureate. But it was this amazing moment. It's the third day of his presidency. He sneaks you in. Were you a little like in awe or no? You're like down to business.
Yeah, and what I said is, Mr. President, this bill is not going to be called Wyden Care. And he kind of looked up and kind of said, okay, this is going to be a serious conversation. I admire you greatly. We can get there. But we Democrats are really good at promising to expand services, but we're not so good at containing costs, which is still the big issue. We spend $4.5 trillion each year now on healthcare. There are about 330 million of us. There's a tremendous amount of waste. If you just took that amount and you wanted to have a different system, you could send every family of four a giant check. So we have to contain, the costs. And that was where we had a difference of opinion. But I still think that as we go forward now on healthcare, there is a role for both political parties. Our party is right about universal coverage. You are never going to fix healthcare in America unless you get everybody covered, period. Otherwise, there's too much cost shifting and prevention. Republicans have some valid points also, particularly in the...
But not Jim Jordan.
No.
Okay.
No. Particularly in terms of private sector research into cures and medicines and innovation. There is a space for everyone. So one of the key rules is spend your political capital. Spend your political capital. And I said, if the president had gone to the country and outlined some of these kinds of choices, we could have avoided some of the problems that we're seeing today. But we still have incredible legislators like Cory Booker that can generate this kind of enthusiasm for important causes and connect with people. And I will tell you a little bit now about Cory, and it starts with, more than anything, virtually every Senate Democrat does not want to speak after Cory Booker. Period. And sometimes, like, the rabbis all come to the Senate on a particular day, and they have Senator Booker go first. And at the last such occasion, I was saying to Brian Schatz, one of our very exciting young senators, also a Jew, he and I were looking at each other, and I said, Brian, I got to go. Good luck following Cory. And the point is, we've got a chance now to tell people the times could not be more serious. And we've got to say we're going to step up and use our chutzpah. And I see lots of people having conversations about leaving the United States. No, no, no. We need those people. We need their energy. We need their brains. We need their chutzpah. Tell them we've got to all stay and fight. The stakes for the country are too great. Do you think our great leaders, the Abraham Lincolns, would pack up now and give up? Of course they wouldn't. Well, that's why I'm running with the right crowd, and I have Cory here.
Amen. I want to say, and we'll get to questions now, but I just want to say, and maybe some people can line up. Is that our microphone there? Yeah. But as people come up, I just want to say to you this, there's a really moving moment in the book to me when you're getting sworn into the Senate. Your father has passed away. You call your mother up, and you could see that she's struggling. And you go out to be with her. And it's a tough moment in your life because your brother is struggling, your mother is struggling, you don't have your father with you. And it really was a powerful moment for me because of the way that you have lived your life, consistent with your values, consistent with how you were raised, standing up as a father, husband, a son. It's just this extraordinary life. And if anything I can say is we're getting ready because your parents' stories, your father coming over here, speaking only like 6 or 7 English words, and the life he made, your mother as well, working, joining the military, being such a strong leader. You dedicated your book to her. The best thing I can say to you as your friend with certainty is that your parents are in heaven right now feeling extraordinary nachas, pride about who their son is.
I told you don't want to follow this.
All right. Let's go to some of the incredible people that are here. Some folks are raising hands. They don't want to come to the microphone. But this gentleman, like, you positioned yourself like 45 minutes ago. So I'm dying to hear what you want to say, to be the first at the mic. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you so much to both of you for being here today. My name is Nathan, and I'm a recent graduate of Montgomery College in Maryland. I'm hoping to teach about the Holocaust and Jewish history. And my question is, what I was wondering is, what would you say are some of the most significant ways in which your parents' experiences in Germany and their experiences as refugees impacted you, affected your life and career, affected your sense of what's right and wrong throughout your life and career? And also, what do you think are some of the most important things that people can take away from your father's book, Stella?
Wow.
Let's start with Rabbi Booker, and then I'll follow.
Well, first of all, as a person who read the book, as I said, he's really honoring his traditions and bringing them into public life. And I just want to say, I think this book is a master's class in being a person of faith. But I always say before, there's a great theologian that said, everywhere I go, I preach the gospel, but only rarely do I use words. You are living the traditions, the best traditions, parts of the traditions in the Jewish faith, and especially the Jewish faith is not defined by its dark times, by the Holocaust, but especially two people who escaped the Nazis. Your fearsomeness with which you fight against extreme politics. You talk about the Charlottesville incident in the book. You have this natural, visceral reaction against evil and against far right wing hate, and it's extraordinary how you're living those traditions.
My dad fled in the 30s. Not all the family got out. We lost family at Theresienstadt and Auschwitz. One of our relatives was the last to die at Auschwitz. And my dad basically talked his way into our army. And my friend Jim is in the second row there. And he is still honoring the group my dad was part of, the Ritchie Boys, featured on 60 Minutes. The German kids who talked their way into the army and dropped the propaganda pamphlets on the Nazis telling them it was hopeless. So we have these deeply personal experiences with family, and it's why I wanted to write about these, because I'm saying to myself, I've had a chance to be in public life a long time. And what I want to do now, because my early background was working with senior citizens, I especially want to do more to get more young people to go to the other end of the demographics in America and get more young people excited about tackling, the big issues and doing all the things necessary that Cory has so eloquently explained tonight, more than anything to prevent another Holocaust.
Thank you. I'm going to keep this line moving. The gentleman here, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Senators. My name is John Alexander Sinman. I work where emergent digital tech and public policy intersect. My grandmother's also a Holocaust survivor, and I think I've also had the occasion I spoke to you on the phone when I was at Columbia as a grad student, so thank you. And I suppose chutzpah really means being brazen, and I know these are tough times, but these are also exciting times, and we're very strong and courageous people, and I'd love to talk to you guys about healthcare and regenerative farming and all those good things. But for me, I think the key issue facing us in this country and the world is the emergent digital tech. And I expect by 2050 to 2070, we're going to have fully automated, fully implemented AI and robotics, and it'll be autonomous and semi-autonomous. So we're brazen now, but everyone I talk to about this, it's it's not quite here yet and people don't understand. So are we giving enough attention? I'm making an urgent call to leadership to focus on this because tech touches everything. What are your thoughts on
let me brag a
tech?
little bit on Cory, because at a time when you hear about all of these exotic ideas with respect to AI, and Jeff makes the good point that there's going to be so many changes in technology that when you rule something out today, there'll probably be a technology that will solve it tomorrow. But I had the honor to work with Cory and Congresswoman Yvette Clarke on what I think takes AI sort of out of the clouds and all of these exotic kinds of applications for something that's called the Algorithm Accountability Act. Because right at the heart of all this is really understanding what algorithms are all about and what they mean. And Cory and Congresswoman Clarke and I have essentially put together a bill that says when it comes to education and your job and your health care, we're going to make sure that as we go forward with this exciting new technology, we're going to have some protections for you. And the industry has reacted pretty well to it. And obviously, because Cory's name is such a draw, most of the chairs last year signed on to our bill as sponsors. So now the ranking Democrats in the Senate Most of them are on our bill, and I think that's going to give us a chance to lead in a practical sort of way and ensure that as you and Jeff and others, master the latest technological development in it, we'll have an anchor that's going to make sure that there's some basic protections for people.
And I just want to do a quick addition because I really want to work through these, so I want to give shorter answers. But I just have to say that combination we had trying to protect the bad, stop bad things from happening. I do want to tell everybody here that there is going to be technology and AI that's touching every area of our existence and solving problems that we can't even see the solutions ourselves yet. I live in New Jersey. In New York City, there was one of the greatest health crises the city had ever seen, is they did not know what to do with all of the horse manure. There was an island, there was just too much. They realized they couldn't put it into the river. It was just mounting up everywhere. People would have to get people to assist them just across the street because there was so much horse manure. And they assembled commissions and the smartest people on the earth to solve the horse manure problem. And then one day it was all done, over. Technology they didn't anticipate called the car. And so you just do not know what's around the corner. What I love about this book, which I hope people will buy and read, what I love about your life is technology changes, but your moral values have to stay the same. Because because technology without values could be cataclysmic to humanity. But as we stay with core values, the values that make us Americans, that we share, and we do share common ground, the values of welcoming the stranger, the values of showing kindness and decency of love, the chesed and the tzedakah, that will ensure that no matter what waves of technology comes, that we as a society will always find a way to make technology work for us and not against us. I want to go to the next question, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much. Sir, I am so jealous of that hair. It's incredible. Yes.
Thank you both for this. One of my parents is Jewish, the other's from New Jersey, so I feel a great connection with both of you. You've talked
That
about
is a
You have
great.
it all.
That is a great
He
mix.
has it all.
That is a great mix.
you've talked about these legislative fights. Some of them have gone on for decades. Some of them have led to great successes. There have been lots of setbacks along the way. Obviously, there have been some pretty big setbacks in the past couple of months. And I wanted to ask, you've talked about strategy and about the importance of using political capital and stuff like that. I wanted to ask, like, more on a personal level, like, when you're in the midst of these fights that go on for so long, what are some of the things that you do for yourself in your personal life, in terms of the way you handle things on a daily basis to maintain the motivation and sort of find the chutzpah as you're staying involved?
Well, what I do when I'm home is I just come out of 6739 Southeast 36th Avenue, dribbling my basketball down the middle of the street. And people say, Ron's going down the lane to the basket. And, the point really is, yes, you have to have diversions with family. And there's somebody special in Cory's life. And we've all watched his romances over the years. And
Hey! She's in the room.
And we wonder if this is the one. And she would be so lucky. Beshert. She would be so lucky. But seriously, you have to get family time.
Really, the secret to life, as someone greater than me said, is the ability to move from discouragement to discouragement without losing your enthusiasm. More than anything, cultivate a sense of hope that really is defined as this. Hope is the active conviction that despair will never have the last word. And if you can do that, like Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, the ability to, no matter what, seeing the wretchedness and the horrors of the world as he did in the Holocaust, he still realized that he had the freedom every single day to choose his attitude, to choose how he was going to show up.
Thank you both.
Hope.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Jane Terry. I'm interested in moving you to local and to the future. So Oregon and New Jersey. I worked for Bob Torricelli many years ago.
Wow.
And I have friends in Portland. So what's your vision for each of your states over the next 10 years? using all of the values that you're talking about, where do you see your states wanting to go? Because they're on either side of the country.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Ron. I'm going to say the gentleman with the iPhone's on, you're the last question. So unless there's somebody here that could not get up for whatever reason, just let me know who you are, because I know some people can't always stand up for a long time at a microphone. So Jane, where did Jane go? Oh, you're there, Jane. Okay. So for me, for the state of New Jersey, I'm really hoping that in 1 year and 11 months, 10 months, that they reelect me. So that's one of my visions for New Jersey. Yes, check. I'm hoping that happens. So if you know any New Jerseyans, if you're related to any New Jerseyans, please let them know that I'm hereby officially announcing my run for reelection. I'm running for reelection. But in all seriousness, for my state, we are one of America's most exciting states. Innovation, agriculture. It is such an extraordinary place. But I really do worry right now about America. I think that we're deepening into a tribalism that is tearing us apart as a nation. One of the things I loved at this book is another subchapter to this book is an ode to finding common ground and common cause amidst a time of shearing forces tearing our country apart. So my hope for my state is that we can be leaders in showing that there is a not a bipartisan way, but a common cause way to still make our state thrive in this next 10 years, which are going to be because of technology, because of challenges of climate change, and more. One of the more challenging decades of New Jersey, America, and humanity. But go ahead, Ron.
And both of us are from states that are essentially considered blue in American politics. And there is this kind of sense that, well, this is an administration, so to speak, that is not going to be kind to states like Oregon and New Jersey. And one of the things that I really hope for, because my state is a leader in healthcare and science and the environment, I really hope that we can be visionaries and show the country how to really have states' rights other than what is coming out of the Trump administration, where they basically say we're for states' rights if we think the state is right. And I think that this is a crucial time for places like Oregon and New Jersey in terms of really honoring what the founding fathers thought about, and we came to call it the laboratories of democracy and the like. It's why I came to Oregon. You know, the book describes that, you know, I had this girlfriend and she said one day, let's go to Oregon. And I fell in love with the place. Oh my God, I thought this was so great. It was so open. It was so interesting. I had no idea what I was going to do, but I wanted to be part of this. It's a long section of the book. And recently I was thinking, how does this connect with my sense of, you know, Donald Trump is sitting there and he's saying there's these 5, 6, whatever number of states where we just don't agree and it's not going to be well. We have reasonable differences of opinion. We're going to cut them off. And people are going to have to deal with some of this. Have you seen these stories in the last couple of days about how there are going to be special conditions attached to California getting help with fire? What was the first thing that we said? Jeff and I and all the great staffers in our office helped with this. We said, let's just think this through here. Because one of the core values we have that Cory talks about that are universal is when you have a natural disaster, which is what happened in California, we all say, that's that on politics. We're done with it. We're there for them because everybody is going to experience one of these. No playing politics. End of discussion. And I said, I'm going to go back to Washington, and I said, I'm going to make sure that, for example, insurance companies in Florida understand that if you do this and you single out, you know, California, this is going to set a precedent for states' rights, and they aren't going to be particularly good for you or anybody else. So that was a longer answer than you wanted, but
Right, but I just got the hook from my chief of staff, who told me that we were supposed to end this at 8, and you have books to sign.
oh my God.
So I apologize. I'm going to talk to the last 3 people in line if they want to grab a word with me, and I'll answer questions. This young lady, you're looking at me like I will die if I don't ask. So you're the last question tonight. Go ahead.
Cory, you've called me Mr. Chairman. Can I have a lengthy closing address?
Yes. You may. You can have anything you want. You have a lot more seniority than me. And
This is important.
Go ahead. Ask your important question. Go.
Okay.
And the 3 of you, I will not go before I talk to the 3 of you. Go. Okay.
My name is Jackie Nadell. My passion is healthcare, so this is to both of you.
Wow.
I am a 2-time cancer survivor.
All right.
And I've survived. And I had thank you. And I had great health coverage. And I also worked for Donna Shalala at Health and Human Services.
Oh, good.
Yes.
But the bigger question today, even when people have healthcare coverage, the insurance companies continue to deny tests, scans, you name it, and people are dying as a result of that. What can you all do to prevent that or fight that? Because that's as bad as almost not having coverage.
Sir, no, you were the healthcare.
We're
champion.
looking now at how you might, in effect, make a sharp departure from business as usual in the health insurance business. And one of the developments I'm looking at is trying to turn this into a nonprofit world. I think if we say, let's have choices that people, want, let's try to attract the best and the brightest, because heaven forbid they're going to be able to do what they were trained to do, which is advocate for patients, not be bookkeepers. If we drive this around the model that takes the profit out of it, I think we have a chance to get more quality out of that $4.5 trillion and attract more young people to medicine.
Did you want to have some final remarks, Mr. Senator?
Yes.
You have 10 seconds left on the clock.
Thank you. First of all, if a senior member of the Senate or a chair of a committee says that they're going to give a closing address, you should do everything you possibly can to start sneaking out, because they are deadly, deadly, deadly affairs. And my not lengthy closing address is simply to say thank you to Bradley, to all of you for coming out on a snowy night, especially my friend, Cory, because he's got a lot on his plate as one of our country's leaders and one of our country's rising stars. And I'm so appreciative. I never thought growing up that a kid like me would have these kinds of opportunities for public service, ever, ever, ever. So I'm so grateful and especially appreciative to have you all here tonight as we look out in the snow, the lights and everything else. And I'm going to use my limited power, since it's not an official kind of thing, that I now make a motion, because this has been so great and how much we appreciate all of you and Senator Booker, that this conversation be continued. I hear no objection, and it is so ordered.
Amen.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. The foul shooting champion of the Congress. Can the 3 of you come on?